Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
The outline of the presentation will be as follows. First, we'll discuss the purpose. Then it will be followed by the literature review, then the methodology. Then we'll discuss the research model, then the hypotheses, the results, implications and limitations, and finally, we'll discuss future research suggestions. The purpose of this study is to examine Facebook utilization and its relationship to academic performance and life satisfaction among college students. The literature review indicates that more than 55% of online teens have at least one social networking account, and students are now being held responsible for their behaviors posted on Facebook by their respective colleges and universities. Additionally, the literature indicates that social networking sites have been found to have the drawback of creating interpersonal melodrama and also consuming one's time. But it also indicates that there are some benefits, which include the building and maintaining of one's personal relationships with peers. We also found from the literature that there's a positive relationship between Facebook utilization and one's perception of Facebook. Also, individuals who tend to use Facebook more on average tend to have lower grade point averages. Also, increased use of Facebook tends to predict lower satisfaction with one's life. And finally, social support predicts one's life satisfaction. The methodology, the sample size consisted of 204 college students. 50% of the sample consisted of females. African Americans consisted of approximately 90%. And the age range consisted of 94% were between the ages of 18 and 29 years of age. With respect to the measures, perception of Facebook was a 6-item scale developed by Ellison et al. In 2007, had an alpha of 0.91, and according to Nunnally in 1978, alpha coefficients, which had an internal liability of 0.70 or greater, is adequate for research purposes. Other instruments that we utilize include life satisfaction, university satisfaction, social support, faculty undermining, malleability of intelligence, self-esteem, personal goal orientation, housing satisfaction, Facebook utilization, and we also had a background information form which is used to capture demographic information. Data analysis was conducted using structural equation modeling, and we also used a one-way ANOVAs to look at gender differences. Dr. Brown will now explain the model.
Okay, again, we look at the model, we see we have 4 outcome variables in this particular model. Personal goal orientation, malleability of intelligence, university satisfaction, along with housing satisfaction, self-esteem, received social support, and faculty undermining were hypothesized to influence academic performance, along with life satisfaction in turn, which was expected to influence academic performance. We also hypothesized that academic performance in turn would influence the perceptions of Facebook, and the Facebook utilization instrument would be influenced by academic performance and life satisfaction. Excuse me. We advanced the following hypotheses: that Facebook utilization would be positively related to the perceptions of Facebook, and Facebook utilization would be inversely related to academic achievement, and that life satisfaction would be positively related to social support, and life satisfaction would be inversely related to Facebook utilization. The results indicated, excuse me, when we looked at the structured equation model, we used Lisro to do all these models. I didn't mention that before. So we see that we have a low chi-square value, positive degrees of freedom, p-value that was non-significant, goodness of fit index, non-fit index, comparative fit index, all exceeded 0.90, consistent with Bolin 1989's recommendation. And the root mean square error approximation was less than 5%, which is consistent with an acceptable fit of the model to the data. So now that we established an acceptable fit of the model to the data, we interpret the structural path coefficient, and we see that faculty undermining was determined to influence overall GPA. However, if you note the R squared, you see that there was a considerable variance left to be explained in this particular model. Life satisfaction as our next dependent variable, we had four significant predictors: university satisfaction, self-esteem, perceived social support, and housing satisfaction all influence life satisfaction. And the perceptions of Facebook had an R squared of 39%, and life satisfaction and Facebook utilization both influence this outcome variable. And Facebook utilization was influenced by GPA and life satisfaction. You note that the R squared was very small, only 4%. Again, with respect to gender differences, we looked at those based on one-way ANOVAs, and we note that females, of course it's nothing unusual, tended to have a higher GPA when compared to their female counterparts. Females had higher levels of life satisfaction, personal goal orientation when compared to males. Females also reported significantly higher levels of self-esteem. However, males reported higher levels of faculty undermining. Thought that was interesting in terms of whether this score came about and why it came about. University satisfaction, again, females reported higher scores with respect to that particular variable. These were not significant. And Lemaro will explain the remainder of the presentation.
Our summary of findings included the fact that GPA and life satisfaction was found to be inversely related to Facebook utilization. Life satisfaction and Facebook utilization predicted perceptions of Facebook in the model. Additionally, social support predicted one's life satisfaction. And females reported higher grade point averages, personal goal orientation, self-esteem, and life satisfaction than males. However, it was found that males reported higher levels of faculty undermining. Implications from these findings include: one, that administrators and counselors should consider ways to decrease Facebook utilization among college students, since Facebook was inversely linked to academic performance. Also, Facebook needs to remain innovative and continue to provide high value to its users, since it was found that Facebook utilization was a predictor of one's perceptions of Facebook. Also, social activities should be encouraged among students who are experiencing depression, since social support was positively related to one's life satisfaction. And finally, increased attention should be placed on college males, since they are found to have lower self-esteem, personal goal orientation, life satisfaction, and higher supporting scores of faculty. As with all studies, ours were no different. We had some limitations. These included cross-sectional research design, which means that our study was a snapshot of one moment in time, and this can be seen by the fact you only sampled one university. Therefore, if you want to develop more causality, you'll need a longitudinal study design implemented. And this also raises the question of generalizability. Can the results be generalized to other contexts with different students? So these are all limitations, and this follows through our future research suggestions. The first one, which is collect larger samples from different ethnic groups to investigate cultural differences in Facebook utilization. Also examine the various personality characteristics of Facebook users. And finally, investigate if there are any individual differences unique to different social networking sites. And this concludes the presentation. Are there any questions?
What do you mean by increased attention to males? What would you recommend?
I would, in terms of workshops, for example, they're facing difficulty in perceiving that their teachers are not giving them adequate attention, or their techniques, their pedagogy is not particularly helping them, while their female counterparts don't do so. So examples of a workshop may be, for example, study sessions or communication classes. But these things need to be worked out within, for example, the student affairs office providing necessary training.
if only males go to these, will that not put a little bit of segregation? We're trying to get away from segregation.
Yeah, I mean, you'd make it, available.
Open to everyone.
Yes, open to everyone, but, you know, the teachers can give a drive. And, since they're also reporting lower overall grade point averages, you can see a common thing. If you'd like, extra credit, or for some other reason you can attend these particular courses. And, so things like that would help to make it seem that we're simply, choosing you up because you're a male. No, there are other factors we're concerned about you.
Was there, since you had both positive and negative results, was there a point at which it became toxic? Or was there a utilization type in which it became toxic?
Okay, yeah, I think that's an excellent question. In terms of utilization, it's been found that, for example, individuals that consume 5 or more hours of Facebook, that's really toxic. To their overall GPA. And it also brings up the question about other activities which are consuming their time. But what is found is that Facebook utilization is a wide phenomenon on campuses. When you look at freshmen, for example, more than 95% of them have an account by their first semester. So what we want to do is to go ahead and have sessions to warn them about these particular dangers. But I think the real gem comes from this, and realizing that it's not simply using Facebook, because some people only consume it for about an hour or so. But I think the real gem is that individuals who consume Facebook or have an account, in comparison to those who choose not to have one, may have some specific negative habits that combine the total cumulative impact of that, which leads to the negative overall GPA. So it's not simply using Facebook utilization unless it's in excess of 5 hours or more.
I think your following study should include Farmville.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that?
Farmville, it's a Facebook game.
Okay, yeah.
The toxic scale, I'm
Yeah.
sure you'll find that.
Yeah, those things have to contribute to the wide utilization, because now it's not simply communication, but also for pleasure.
Yeah, I have seen that.
I just want to make one quick comment. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm very impressed with your students, and I'm impressed that they're here,
Thank you.
so kudos to you. But I want to make one comment about the inverse relationship between Facebook level or degree of Facebook participation and academic performance. I think that's reflective of a larger problem we have in our culture today. Insofar as, for example, my students text during class. Some of them try to sneak checking their email on their laptop, and I'm really going to crack down this semester on that. And I'm going to probably start each class texting on my phone and see how they feel about that, because I think that I have a teenage son too, and I think that rudeness is becoming more acceptable in our society, and I have concerns about that. But I think the multitasking, I think it affects your performance on many levels. I think it's academic, but I think it's, your ability to interact socially. So, I think that finding is reflective of a problem that I think is going to become more apparent, I think, in our culture. So, I think there are the positives. Again, I have an 11-year-old and a 16-year-old. My 16-year-old in particular, texting is an issue, but I see among many of his friends, they just focus on that. They'll be together and they're all texting, and they're not really interacting, and I have some concerns about that.
Yeah.
I probably showed it and I didn't pay attention. I was wondering if you had any demographics in it.
Demographics?
Yes, I think it would be helpful.
Demographics.
In terms of, it would be helpful to know the age of these participants, etc. It would be nice to know if you could break this up for male, female, and see how you get the results or compared.
In terms of Facebook utilization?
Right.
Yeah, there's no difference. There's no and over. There's no difference.
Yeah, we did look at
What
that.
about the level of the level of education in terms of are you a junior, sophomore?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about class rank.
Right.
Yeah, we captured that data, we just didn't show it here, but we do
It'd be
have.
very
that.
interesting to know. That's very good.
Given the fact that your findings show that the negative impact on the educational effort of using Facebook, what are the implications, do you think, the fact that pedagogically now faculty begin to use Facebook to enhance student peer learning?
Okay, I guess there's a positive and negative. I would say that I want to go to the causation level here. I say there's a correlation. I think the correlation stems from using Facebook along with other negative behaviors or other time wasting activities too. But so it has to be more or less on a case-by-case basis, because it's been found that Facebook does help individuals who have, for example, anxiety with face-to-face communication, so they're able to find a wonderful avenue to still develop relationships. Now that goes ahead and creates new problems when they're going face-to-face now they're having interpersonal melodrama, because they're not used to having to communicate to a spontaneous individual face-to-face for the first time. So I think it has to go by case and analyzing that this person's depression is so severe that we'd rather allow them to communicate, build up their life satisfaction, then after that add value to them to allow them, teach them skills to communicate on a face-to-face basis. So I think it's complicated, it's complex, but I would think that it's negative to simply just overrule it. But in terms of applying specifically to your situation in the teaching context, I think there will be some value, but it might end up being a distraction, especially considering other activities such as Farmville they might do on the way to these discussion sessions. So a lot of it would look at the different characteristics of the Facebook user. Do they have the discipline to simply log on and use Facebook for that, or they're easily distracted? I missed the session because on the way there's Farmville and I have to go and plant this. Yeah, so a lot of this comes into play. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I have a Facebook account and I monitor, I think, most of the folks, my students in here. I think it's just a matter, as Lemaro was saying, how you employ it. If you employ it in the classroom, it can be beneficial. But if you spend too much time, it goes back to the economic rule of thumb, right? I mean, you can't get that time back you spend on Facebook, and if you spend the time not studying and on Facebook, then when you come to that exam, you're not gonna do well. That's pretty much the way it goes. So I think Facebook has some positive attributes if it's used appropriately, much like anything else. Moderation is the key, I think, and prioritizing.
I guess I came in from a student perspective, especially since you've got some of your students, and I'm well impressed with your students as well. I wish we had some undergraduate students that were thinking along this way, but from your perspective, give me a really useful way to use Facebook in my class, other than just being able to keep track. I mean, forget the games and all that kind of stuff. I'm looking for a way to actually integrate Facebook into a class and to make that, and of course, let me give you an example of the class, that'll help you think that would vary. Let's say it's some type of a computer-based class, and I'm trying to get students to learn about some computer concepts or whatever that might be. Give me a really good example of a positive way to use Facebook and to keep them not distracted with the other things, but to use it, to actually use it where it'll be to their advantage, so that I can leverage that. Because I really am, I'm struggling looking for that.
Okay, I guess some of this would require some time to think through, but there's something immediately that comes to my mind would be, for example, individuals working in a group. The interaction is easy to keep accountability by simply posting something on their wall without any expense. You don't have unlimited plans per se. But additionally, these people tend to be online, if not simply by virtue on their computer, on their phone. They can be playing, for example, a game of checkers together, and immediately after that, since Facebook allows the development of applications, they can be working on code simultaneously together. So different avenues like that in which you're able to still combine work and fun together. After we work on this code, then we go ahead and have fun, play a game of checkers, for example, simultaneously, or X, Y, Z, would allow potential impetus and benefit for them to actually get work done and provide accountability. Where are you? What's up to you? What's up with you? And you as a professor can easily check on their remarks and even post a comment. Yes, where are you? So things like that, just something right off the head, but further thought and development can be given to it to make it a successful tool.
Just curious, what was the mean number of friends that your participants had on Facebook?
The mean number, if I remember correctly, was in the 100 range. now you have a big, discussion about using that as a predictor, because some of them are not really friends.
Well, yeah, there's a huge
exactly,
discussion
so,
about
yeah.
that, but what?
About 100.
About 100, and then what was the, you know what the largest and the smallest were?
Some people have ridiculous numbers. For example, some people may have 5,000. Other people have created 2 accounts, and now they're maxed out, so they create another one. But a lot of these individuals are using
Those are the
Facebook.
people who are in the toxic stage.
But people are utilizing it, 3 or even less.
Doesn't this work the same way religion does in terms of economic progress? The little religion is good. Well, little religion is good, you go too far and you begin to have a problem again.
There's all
I think you can apply this to many aspects of life.
Yeah.
To sum it up.
In your utilization,
I'll sidestep.
in your utilization, did you find out how many people they actually communicate with on Facebook on average? Yes, you have 100 friends, but how many people do you really talk to?
What we actually did was to look at, I guess, how many times per week they use Facebook. We didn't actually check how many of your friends are true friends.
Right.
That would be an interesting follow-up to actually look at. Are your friends really your friends?
The last, they're very, very important. I think you can further this discussion and use something like a Tobit model to investigate the intensity of use. And that will also make this
That's
very,
a good
very,
suggestion.
the intensity of use. So the extent, plus now looking at the structural operation models, where the Tobit model will be very, very.
Anything else for Dr. Brown, Mr. Thompson? Thank you very much.